Okay, then probably we will start. We will have about 10-15 minutes at the end of the session for your questions, so you will have an opportunity. Article 1 says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Here is where we stumble. 8 richest people own as much as 3.6 billion poorest people in the world. Digitalization of today doesn't seem to contribute to equality, actually, because the World Bank's report says the disparity between the rich and the poor is higher than 25 years ago. And it keeps growing. Are there any trends or technologies that could give us hope here?
So I think, first of all, isn't it great that there is a Declaration of Human Rights? The second is that humankind as a society has been radically transformed by technology. But on the side of society, how we organize society, we're still completely dictated by processes and conventions which come out of an age which was pre-technology, pre-industrialization. So it is no wonder that as we unleash technology, but don't revise the social processes and how society is organized, that it becomes completely lopsided and just few people are on top. And what, in my view, is so exciting for you now, you are at the brink of a new age. And at this brink of the new age, we have to design social processes, which includes politics and economics, to create a fair world. But it's not just a fair world, it's the issue creating a society which is at peace with nature and with us as human beings.
Does the digital era give more freedom or take it from humans? This is also a big question. Are we free to choose what to buy, who to talk to, what to believe in, and who to love and respect and vote for? Or social media algorithms dictate us what to do? Or is it just an imitation of choice? Is it just an illusion of choice? Do those algorithms, those opportunities, digital opportunities, make our life easier to choose what we really want to choose?
So first, the positive. Isn't it great that I can search the internet, I can download direct films to see a person, how he responds? Wikipedia, for me, is the source which has contributed more to peace than anything else, and I would give Wikipedia 10 years in a row the Nobel Prize of Peace. But then, second, isn't it strange that the manuscripts of scientific publications are gated? If you want to download a research paper, it costs you $37. If you want to have a manuscript of a book, it costs $150. If you want to get quality news, you have to pay. So it's clear today the promise of digitization is not fulfilled. So we have to change that. And I think that's the challenge, how to change and how to make that happen.
Continuing about challenges, and Article 3, Article 12 pose those challenges clearly. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy. What we are having today, governments and corporations explain total online control by security needs. But the question is whether it's leading to safety or to overwhelming world. Today, personal data is the most valuable asset. Corporations and governments buy data, bribe for data, steal data. Why? To rule the world. And we're part of the game, actually, all here at Perm Winter School. We had to ask for your personal data to allow you to take part in the conference. The question is it able to be out of the game? Are we able to be out of the game? Is it possible to stay aside and not to participate?
So it's clear that today it doesn't work. And if you read the Declaration of Rights, it's fantastic what it misses out. So first, it talks of human beings, and it talks of political states. And we know that in political states, they do not abide by those rules. But you know who should also be subject to the same rules? Companies. Because companies which have a monopoly, they're the equivalent of the king and the kingdoms of the past, these were businesses. Queen Elizabeth I, she ran a business out of Great Britain, and her sailors conquered the world. But that was a pure business. So Mark Zuckerberg, he's a businessman. He is a king in his kingdom. And if we use Facebook, we're citizens of Facebook. And we should request democratic rights. But not democratic rights as it is in Switzerland, where you have to go on Sunday and post your vote in a box. This has to be done electronically, and it has to be done in such a way that small minorities can get their projects executed. So, if you read the Declaration of Human Rights, it's clear what it misses out. It does not talk of companies, which are the modern states of the future. Second, what it doesn't say is environment, sustainability, that we're not allowed to destroy the environment where we live in. It's not mentioned at all. And then another thing, which is a glaring gap. No one in the declaration, the word of science, the objective truth, is not mentioned. And just let me explain. Certain questions, like when you go to school and have to solve difficult problems, only the best students can solve. But now, in the classroom, does the teacher ever make a vote? Do you think relativity theory is true or not? It's the best who tell us if it's true or not. It's not the average. So in the spirit of that, we cannot debate in public discourse, is it true that something destroys the environment? We have to trust the specialist who tells us, is it true or not? So it's the same like going to a doctor. You rely on his honest opinion. And it's there that in religion, in medicine, there is the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath tells the doctor he shouldn't think of his own bottom line, how he can maximize the profits. What counts, he has to think of his patient, work in the interest of his patient. So in the same spirit, I think I should, as a human being, have a right that the person whom I depend on, or the organization which I depend on, has to think in terms of my interests, not its interests. And in this spirit, we have to expand human rights and engage for that science is included. And it's not allowed to pursue a policy that's contrary of the interests of science.
Would be actually good. The first thing, I was reading the declaration and thinking the first thing which is missing is environment and our responsibility. And the right for our kids to live in a better condition, in a better world, on a greener planet, greener than we have it at the moment. But unfortunately not. But what there is freedom of thought and freedom of opinion and expression. And that takes us back to your comment about kings. Because yes, we live in the world where Twitter influencers or YouTube bloggers have more power than politicians or professors. And how do we decide what deserves our attention, what deserves efforts, what deserves admiration? What should we spend our time for? Teens go by online reviews, deciding whether to read Dostoevsky or not. That's true. Have you read Dostoevsky? Oh no, he's got bad reviews on the internet. I read about it. No, not today. So there are no authorities basically to tell us what's art, what's true, what's good, what's bad, what's important. How does that, on a global scale, on a larger scale, influence society, influence culture?
So it's clear today that it's very bad. But the interesting thing, and I think this is the fascinating, we can easily change that. It's not so difficult. So just something, so whoever meets me has to hear the following story. I'm deeply frustrated today that there is no open access news publication. Free. But now the following. We cannot have just people contribute and you have a pile of contributions. Wouldn't it be nice if you had the following? There is a channel and we're interested, for example, in politics or economics, finance, business, whatever, a channel. And there is an editorial board. And the editorial board offers a prize for the best contribution every hour. Contributions come in, after an hour, the committee, editorial board says, what was the best? And just as an example, the person gets $100 of those, and in addition, the person who edited the text gets another $25. After 6 hours, the same editorial board sits back and says, what was the best contribution over the last 6 hours? Including the ones which received the prize every hour, and hands out a prize of $200 plus $50 for the editor who kind of corrected and improved the text. After a whole 24 hours, there is another prize which the person who did that best article got actually $400. And the same thing for the editor, the same is repeated on a weekly basis. So what does it mean? So when people around the world contribute their articles, they know if I'm the best within an hour, I'll get a prize. But think if that contribution was so good that I would get a prize not just only for an hour, but also for 6 hours, but even for a day, I suddenly make a cascade. Now, why is this so interesting? Because it means, first, people who write, who search and do valuable journalistic work get real money. The second is, I as a reader, what should I read? Do I really have to read every article? If I have limited time, I just read those which have received the prizes. And now you say, but who will pay for those prizes? If the quality of those prizes are high, because people respect it, it's well done, the new publishing house can auction the prize off and say, who wants to pay that prize? And maybe it's a large computer company, or to be provocative, a bank, which says, I want to pay for that. And it will offer to pay $200 to pay the prize, where the prize money which the journalist receives is only $125 for the journalist, so the publishing house can pocket the difference of $75. So if we would create a publishing venue of that sort, you would have high quality contributions and around the globe. And so this is just one example of how we can innovate, how we have content, how influences, how opinions are shaped. So it's just a matter of being ingenious.
It sounds like a perfect pitch. Are there any media people in the audience? Are there any investors in the audience? Is there anybody who want to be part of the team? Because it's a perfect pitch. So talking about governance or discussions or assembles or coordination, We'll be talking about communications and art during Perm Winter School. And it seems that we are more connected than ever in this digital age. Travels are easier, global teams are effective, communications seem to have no borders, but we also are, in a sense, more isolated because we work from home, because we consume entertainments on our phones or laptops, because we meet friends in chats. So the question is, does digitalization isolate us or unite us? Is it dualism? What will we see in the near future in this aspect?
So it's clear that there is this very negative trend. But also, we have to understand that in this transition of digitization, we're a halfway house. And actually, the real empowerment is just to come. And what I am so fascinated about, the digitization, is that each person of yourself or each project can have its own token and represents its own currency. And why is this so important? Because if you have a project which is your pet project, and maybe you want to create a small school, how can you fund that? Today you go to, you try to get to investors, they're cynical so much, why do you want to do it? But if you have your own token, which you give out to people which can then send their children to school if they first get it, you can create your own currency. And then you can use this for creating your bazaars, they can use it as a means of payment, as a means of exchange. So digitization, tokenization is incredible empowerment. And the empowerment to implement your personal dreams. And if we can implement our personal dreams, then society will be interesting. You create small communities. So I see the future as being an incredible empowerment. And an empowerment where, just to kind of say something very provocative, sometimes in small villages, there is this big tree which plays a very important role within society. You come back and see the tree and it has different colors and different times of year. But you know who will also have his own currency? Is the tree. So the tree will have its own means of paying for itself to get that people care for it. So future will be far more intense and diverse and cultivated, that I don't share your worries.
Okay, this brings us a little bit closer to our right for work and for decent income. And can you say that during this digital era, there are changes in investment priorities, in some business values? Which changes seem most drastic, if any? And what would you expect to have in the near future in this aspect?
So first of all, I mean, kind of what's happening here on a global scale for many, many people, I mean, is just unspeakable. I mean, if you go to Dubai, the people are transported there, have to disappear again. If you also, I live in Switzerland, I mean, which is one of the wealthiest countries. But think, 30% of the people don't have enough money from month to month. So something is really wrong. Now, I believe the answer is not that we ask for governments, please do that, please do that. These are old-fashioned structures which are biased by the power distribution of the past. But what we can do is the following. We can build a commercial enterprise, a business that is international, across boundaries, and, for example, offer universal income. There is no reason why not a company can offer universal income. You first say, but Richard, why do you make this proposal? If it's well designed, I can build a strong brand, I can build loyalty, I can get customers to deposit their excess cash with me. So I would argue we shouldn't rely on the traditional political states to implement those ideas. We also shouldn't fight them. We should just, kind of be loyal citizens. But what we should do is be very innovative at a corporate level when we do our enterprise and say, we'll provide those services.
So, supposedly, we'll be having more time for leisure. And in the Declaration of Human Rights says we have a right for leisure. But we all know what our leisure, our typical leisure today is. This is a laptop, this is a telephone. A telephone is our bank, a telephone is our passport, a telephone is our school and our office and our playground. So will there be a trend of going out of the phone, going out of the internet? Because Alexei Klimenko, sitting in the front row, has brought gaming boards, and he will offer an offline session, I hope, in the interval. So do you think that's going to be a trend? Is it a trend at the moment?
So first, I'm very much a fan of the following, that you have in Eastern philosophy the principle of yin and yang, two opposing principles which work together. And I think this is the answer here as well. On the one hand, I think it's great. Access across the globe, I can use my smartphone and it does everything. But on the other side, isn't the personal encounter unbelievable? Doesn't that have this extra flavor which can resonate at so many more levels? So I would argue we just have to understand that life is a yin and yang. You have to embrace two very different extremes. And then there is, what I would argue, true happiness, true discovery, and you can be really surprised by what life has on offer.
So we are almost done. Article 30 says, nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any acts aimed at destruction of any rights and freedoms to set forth herein. But United Nations is a traditional, old-fashioned organization that has been created by states, that works with states. And it is the states that very often set limitations to what extent great values of this Declaration of Human Rights are followed, or what is written in that declaration. So with the new understanding of global and local that digitalization brings, with the new opportunities of interaction and coordination, and that is very provocative, yes. Does it bring any new concepts or ideas of a more effective and fair organization of society? What can we do to turn the wonderful declaration from just declaration to reality?
I mean, I've mentioned it yesterday. I think there is a principle which I think we're not aware. Each one of you knows 50 people, and the next person knows 50 people, and that person knows 50 people again. So within 6 links, you reach over, in theory, 15 billion people. But what does it mean? If you're true to yourself, you implement in the smallest scale what you think is important, it will travel. So I would argue, what we today have to do is we should not think, oh, I have to change the opinion of 1 billion people, 7.4 billion people. That's not what has to be done. I have to do interesting work in the here and now. And this work here and now will travel. And now, that's the good news. The bad news is that the journey which it has to travel is much longer. But as we see with grassroots movements, it can suddenly create a whole fire which inspires a lot of people around the globe. And what I find today is if I travel, kind of literally, any person who sits next to me, I start to talk. the person has very much the same issues as I have. And he has the same issues as you have. So we all share the same concerns. What is lacking is that we have a path out of the mess. And what I find, what we have to understand, is we have to embrace to each other opposing principles. The one principle is science, knowledge. And science is developed not by an average, it's by resorting and relying on the experts, the true specialists, who are committed to the Hippocratic Oath. They don't want to become famous, they want to tell us the truth. And that is how science is being done. And then the other is the spontaneous, that we come up with the right ideas to do the adequate, and then together that will be inspirational to bring about change.
Thank you. So going back to your yesterday's lecture, you mentioned weather forecast for the humankind, that we have so much data that should be used to predict what's the weather, what it's gonna be. So what's your personal weather forecast for the humankind for the next decade?
So first, I have to say that I'm seriously, seriously worried. I mean, the old world on which we all rely, with its central banks, governments, my goodness, they are in a true mess. In 2008, they used their last piece of cash to salvage the global financial system, make sure that the world ticks over. In the meantime, nothing has been done to address the underlying problems. And what is worse is that if the next small crisis comes, my goodness, how can they support it? Will they go on television and tell us everything is fine? And you see them pale like this? So this is my concern. But on the other hand, it's phenomenal, the technology which is happening in the background, the whole blockchain revolution, the tokenization, the opportunities that it has. So I think, and this is my personal opinion, it will be very painful the coming few years, because established wealth will suddenly disappear, there'll be kind of unemployment, but there are answers. So I'm very optimistic for the medium and long term, but seriously worried about the short term. So hopefully I'm wrong about the short term.
Hopefully. So I think we are done and we ran out of time, but we still have some 10-15 minutes for questions. If you help us with the mics, we've got 40 volunteers during these 2 days with us. Let's cheer up for them. They will be helping us with the questions. So, any questions?
English, right? As you wish. Yeah. Thank you for the interview, and I have a question. Yes, I believe that we are creating a new world, new economy, which is involves a tokenization of the assets, or even like myself or any other person. Do you think this new system will compete and will conquer and will take over or even destroy the classic financial system, or they will evolve together in parallel? What do you think about that?
So I'm very glad you raised this question. So first of all, to answer is, this new tokenization world has happened so far outside the accepted financial system, which in my view, and this is an active debate which I and Sergey have, I think has reduced its impact. What I argue for is that this blockchain tokenization should be embraced in the traditional financial system. And that is possible. Without changing the law, we can actually get that put in. But it's like software, it's not quite trivial. So, but if you work, you can achieve that. And what's so fascinating is that this new world of tokenization, digitization, can live in parallel with the old world, and of course it will take over. Because the competitive edges in terms of price, improvement, efficiency, flexibility are so huge. And here I can say, and have to thank Lykke business team for the exceptional work which they have done, is we're doing business with one of the biggest banks of Europe. And what have they asked us before Christmas? Could you please help us to tokenize a big part of their business? So we see that the traditional world is coming this way and offers great opportunities. So yes.
Any other questions? Еще вопросы есть?
You can ask provocative questions.
So, Richard, so we are moving to the where the communities and people will be more empowered, right? With their and the money as a concept will be not anymore a monopoly of the, let's say, the states and even the banks, the banking system. How in this world you will see the role of governments and the banks? How in this future world you will see the role of the governments and the states?
So that's the governance in the sense of solidity of the issuer of that currency, if that I understand correctly.
Not the governments, but the governments, the states.
Now, so it's very simple. If the traditional states do a good job, it's clear we want them. They're so important. So there's no doubt that they have a key role to fulfill. But if they don't perform so well, I'm not hostage to that currency. I'm not hostage to the government. They lose their power automatically. So just now, there is a lot of bashing going on with the US and Trump. So if I go to the US today, I have to pay in the shops by paying with dollars. And if I have the export products which I buy from the US, I have to pay with dollars. So therefore, I keep my assets in dollars. But because I have to keep my assets in dollars, the value of the dollar remains higher. Now, if I can pay with anything, any token, and the market maker swaps it into whatever the recipient receives, I don't have to hold dollars. So, the monopoly of the government is disappeared. It will be under competitive pressure. Now, I believe competitive pressure helps organizations to address its own problems. This has to address its own problems. And if it doesn't, it loses power. So, but what I want to say that today, territorial governments over big countries have a big say. I would argue that the shift will move towards cities. So in the kind of structure of political theory, I would argue that cities will become much more powerful and the governments of cities will have a bigger role. So that's my outlook.
Я, с вашего позволения, на русском вопрос задам. Ричард, я слушаю все время о новом мире и представляю себе, что мы обсуждаем только...
I have to get the right translation.
Are you ready?
I have to see yes after.
Okay. Мой вопрос, он провокационный, как вы любите. Когда мы говорим о новом мире и о таком конкурентном, токенизированном мире, мы говорим об активной и сознательной части населения. Как в вашем представлении будет работать благотворительная история, социальная поддержка и защита? Да? Вот как вы себе видите филантропические общества в мире токенов?
First, they will work much better. And the reason is the following, that just coming back, if you have your own token and misbehave, then the value of your token goes down. So actually, you're being positively incentivized to behave in the right way. So that's a positive force. Today, there is no subtle mechanism to reward people for their positive behavior. That's on one thing. Then the foundations themselves can issue their own token. The Red Cross can have its own Red Cross token, which will make its job a lot easier, because now it loses a lot of money at first. You know, it has its project, people are very motivated, but they have to pay in dollars, they have to pay in Swiss francs, and then lose a lot of right in the conversion. But if you have a high credibility for your social enterprise, then people will hold that tokens as a means of wealth preservation. And that gives you more assets to then empower to implement on your project. So I see only a positive feedback loop. And also, I think today when you go and see expenditure in the whole healthcare, the problem is it's very, I mean, kind of, it's not subtle enough. So when people have cardiac problems, how can I simply reward people for a kind of healthy lifestyle? Isn't it easy today with your kind of smartphone step counter for every step to do to get a fraction of a ruble? But that you can do in this tokenized world.
Okay, I have one more question. Do you believe that the wealth will spread more fair and the same, or I do not know, the competition will be lower or higher in the new world?
So first of all, if you think about emergent systems are not flat by definition. You will not have, you know, kind of everyone has $10,000 cross. No, you'll have scaling laws of unfair distribution. But that's not bad. What's bad is if the guys who have these big wealths can abuse the rest of the system and stay up there indefinitely. So that's on the one side. The second thing is that in this new framework, you have the opportunity to empower people to do their own project, which gives them a lot of, you know, kind of more power to kind of execute.
Okay. Thank you.
Probably the last question.
Very short one. There is a famous phrase that God creates humans, cold, made them equal. Could you continue this phrase in a few words with Bitcoin?
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
God created humans.
Yes?
Cold, made them equal.
Yes?
Could you continue this phrase with Bitcoin?
Very much. I think the future will be any token will be equal and has the equal right. So in a sense, and that I find very interesting, so everything will have an alter ego, and the alter ego is that it has a token existence where it can have its own kind of impact. And I think what we have to understand to manage the future, it's the future that, you know, kind of the world is safe. You have to have the analogy of a balloon. In a balloon, what is important? That it doesn't have a hole anywhere. So in a balloon, the smallest part is important. And I argue the future is that we are respectful and mindful of every small detail. Because if we do that, then we'll create a truly sustainable society. So.
I think we should finish here. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thanks.
It's always
Thanks.
a pleasure talking to you. It's always a pleasure meeting you in Perm. Thank you.